I'm thrilled to welcome Sarah Hunt from the Rainey Center onto District of Conservation, broadcasting on both the podcast and also my YouTube channel. Sarah, it's long overdue that we connect. I'm grateful that Sarah Sellup put us in touch with each other, a mutual friend, and I know you work closely with her. So great to have you on the show. You have a very interesting take on energy policy that is percolating here in DC and beyond. So great to connect with you officially and have your thoughts on the issues.
I am so delighted and pleased to be here with you. You also have a fabulous, unique take on energy policy. I think between the two of us, we could get a lot of fun things accomplished for America if we put our heads together. But for now, we'll have a nice conversation.
I like that thinking. That's awesome. Why don't you describe your role at the Rainey Center? How did you get involved in the energy policy space? Because everyone has a unique story. We don't necessarily follow a traditional trajectory. I came to it by accident and actually from the hook and bullet side, but I'm curious to hear your story, and I think my listeners would too. But explain your role and how you got interested in these issues.
Thank you so much. That's one of my favorite questions because I was born on Earth Day.
Really?
Yes, I was born on Earth Day. That is my birthday every year. And my parents will tell you, ever since I was a small child, I've cared about creation. I've cared about environmental stewardship. One of my father's favorite tales about my youth is I think I was 7 or 8 years old and I saved a tree in our backyard that he was going to cut down. I asked him not to do it, and he acquiesced. And so it's been a lifelong passion of mine. It's one of the reasons why I'm on the American Conservation Coalition board. You know, they, of course, are more than just energy, they're about conservation and stewardship broadly. I am also a Western girl. I'm from a Western state, New Mexico, and water is everything. And guess what? Water is an energy issue. It is a fundamental energy issue. Water scarcity, and the use of water in energy production, the use of, the use of water in electricity generation, this all really matters. So if you start thinking about water and water scarcity and water abundance and how important that is, you quickly run into energy. Ultimately, what does energy policy and natural resources policy and creation care have to do with everyone? And it's that these things are the fundamental building block of our quality of life, of contemporary quality of life, and of lifting people out of poverty across the globe. It's frequently said, it's a trope, there is no such thing as an energy poor country that is a wealthy country. And what we need, from a conservation and human health perspective, which is why I would say, yeah, I'm a conservationist, I'm an environmentalist, because what we want energy produced in a way that gives as much quality of life while taking as little quality of life. Like, we all understand, we all know that air pollution is a concern. Over 9 billion people die every year prematurely from pollution caused by industrial emissions. Well, guess what? We don't have to shrug our shoulders at that. We don't have to stop using all of our natural resources. We can innovate better technology, whether it is more energy efficient appliances and energy efficiency in transportation, or technologies that are affordable and can reduce emissions that are dangerous. It's all about looking at that glass half full instead of half empty, which is what I love about the conservative approach to these issues. We do know that caring for creation is important. We also know that caring for the quality of life of people is just as important. And we believe in human ingenuity, that we can tackle these problems and solve them.
Yeah, conservative conservationism is something a bunch of us have been trying to get out there for the last few years. I'm not the only person, and I'm glad I'm not the only person who believes that, because I think it's an issue we have ceded to the left. Sometimes I think the response is to be like the left, instead of, our own version of it,
Mm-hmm.
offer a distinction, but talk about balanced use and all that type of stuff. And as a fellow Westie, because I'm from Southern California too, so
Awesome.
I
Yeah.
think I think we come about it a little differently than some of our Eastern friends,
Mm-hmm.
because we've seen, this juxtaposition of public lands, public waters, water scarcity. I had wildfires. New Mexico has wildfires too.
Yes.
So you see this confluence of conflict that often is brought about by partly
Mm-hmm.
carelessness and then overreach by government not wanting to actually do its job, its stated job of promoting a high quality of life, and then they let nature run its course with rewilding or preservationism, radical preservationism, and then you get even worse environmental outcomes while reducing human
Mm-hmm.
quality of life. So I love that you said that, and I think that's something that we'd like to see, conservatives and even non-conservatives champion.
Yeah.
And I think with
Yes.
reconciliation, yeah, and I think with reconciliation recently, there's been a lot of debate over, developing public lands for affordable housing. We could spiral off into a separate conversation about that. And I'm a little paused by that, or I get a little paused by that because I think there are better ways to address the access
Mm-hmm.
issue to allow for access rather than just like taking another extreme from rewilding to like let's develop everything like these unaccountable whatever ugly dry shrub places, and I'm like, to a lot of people out west
Right.
it's not ugly. And
Right.
sometimes that's
Right.
where we'll differ from some of our fellow Republicans
Mm-hmm.
in these natural resources issues, but I think there is a value to public lands. Like a lot of conservatives out west love public lands. We love
Mm-hmm.
multiple use, whether it's for energy development, hunting, fishing, grazing, the traditional uses, and maybe there could be some future uses
Mm-hmm.
considered for that. But I want to speak more to your role at Rainey Center and what you've
Mm-hmm.
been tackling. So I've seen some of your threads recently, like you've been explaining a lot what's happening in the Inflation Reduction Act, reconciliation, debate about what the changes look like. So are you only focusing on that, or are there other things that are kind of in your sphere of attention right now?
As you are all too aware, budget reconciliation and the big beautiful bill is the focus of everyone in DC right now. The Rainey Center is a leadership community and a think tank. We have a wonderful network called the LAMP Network, the Leadership Alliance for a More Perfect Union. That is local, state, and federal elected officials across the country that we work with to support and to help advance policies that build freedom, equality, and a more perfect union where the American dream is for everyone. I founded the Joseph Rainey Center for Public Policy after working at ALEC for a couple of years. And while I was there, I developed some wonderful relationships with state legislators who came to me and said, we love ALEC, they're doing great work. We need something that's more intensive for the 10 to 15% of us who are tackling some of these tough issues. Can you help us? Can you put together a support system and policy help? And that is how the Rainey Center and the LAMP Network were born. It's been pretty exciting. We opened our doors almost exactly 7 years ago on June 1st of
Congratulations.
2018. And it's been a wonderful ride with many beautiful people here in DC and across the country. We are headquartered in Washington, DC, but we have folks on our team who from Oregon to North Carolina who work with us as on our staff, as well as all of the amazing policymakers at the state and local level. I did want to touch on something that you said about Southern California. My friends Jonathan and Ashley lost their home in the Palisades fire.
Oh, that's
No,
horrible.
they essentially did. Actually, I need to correct that. Their house was, I think, one of two houses in their whole neighborhood that didn't burn down, but it's damaged and you can't live there because of the environmental degradation caused by all of the other houses in your community burning down. And one of the problems there was, of course, water scarcity and regulations that prevented them from releasing water to fight the crisis. And I think that gets back to energy, and it gets back to why this can be maybe a tough issue. We all appreciate the environment, but the human need of the world is great. And when it comes to choosing between human need and water conservation or energy use, I think it's fair to say we want to choose quality of life for humans. And frankly, it would have been much better for the environment if they'd had enough water to fight those fires.
Because I think a lot of environmentalists or status quo environmentalists have often viewed this question or this issue as like a zero sum game, that we have to
Mm-hmm.
put the interests of nature ahead of people, consume less energy, reduce our quality of life, and we'll achieve these, so-called stated goals by arbitrary
Mm-hmm.
deadlines to cut our emissions by
Mm-hmm.
2050. but you don't necessarily see those deliverables, and it's really hard
Right.
to forecast, how things are going to pan out.
Hmm.
Or you might see a natural reduction just because of innovation, people
Yes.
returning things to the market, and
Hmm.
we often talk about here on the show, and something I'm really passionate about is showcasing that, or rather, a point that I like to make often is that, and we know this, as you stated earlier, that there are no energy poor countries. They're energy rich, and they're simultaneously very productive on their economic, dimensions as well, because you can't have economic or energy poverty and then economic
Hmm.
poverty. It just, I mean, you could have poverty. Sorry, yes, you'll have energy poverty and economic poverty together, but the positive relationship between energy and economic productivity is very robust, very
Yes.
documented. And
Hmm.
it's just like the fact that we have to choose between prosperity and conservation is such a wrong choice. We can have
Yeah.
both. We can certainly prioritize human well-being, and that's where
Hmm.
maybe, before we talk about nuclear energy and
Yeah.
some of these other things, but I want to
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
your opinion on energy abundance, because right now I feel like the prevailing thought, not necessarily of the current federal government, but we had heard for 4
Hmm.
years, and a little bit on the global scale, and we still see this a little bit in the EU and some other countries, that we have to be, reducing our energy consumption to achieve a certain goal environmentally. But they're still like very economically prosperous, but they're dealing with a lot of shortcomings. They're dealing with power outages. They're
Hmm.
having to rely on, Russian oil and gas imports despite claiming to go green. So you see those paradoxes.
Right. I
Um,
mean, Cefe still has their contract to import Russian oil and gas.
Yeah, and and
Yes.
and so I think that's why you see here in this country, whether it's the Trump administration, members of Congress, the private sector, are adopting this notion of energy abundance. This is becoming very popular.
Hmm.
You see it kind of stemming off of a general abundance mindset, where as you produce more and consume more, you're not going to have this environmental degradation that we often hear about, because as more people have disposable income, they're consuming more with technology. As you said,
Hmm.
everything we do revolves around energy. You can't escape it, and if you reduce it, like, you're going to have fewer functions. You won't have lights for your productions. You won't have the
Right.
computer operating. You won't have running water. This, that, so
Yeah.
many things
Right.
depend on energy usage.
Washing machines, dishwashers, microwaves, all the things that make life better for women. Can we
Yes.
talk about that
And that.
too?
Yes.
About how if you look at electricity and energy, it is so important for women's quality of life. I mean, I love the idea of the slow food movement and hanging all the clothes on the line out to dry, but moms don't have time for that. I have 8 nieces and nephews. I'm the oldest of 9 children. I was homeschooled. I don't have kids myself, but I know what it's like to raise kids and have them around. And we have amazing moms, amazing women out there, and whether they are a stay-at-home mom or they are working a job and coming home, all of these modern conveniences, if you make it too hard for women to have affordable energy and affordable appliances, and it would create so much more work for women, right?
Yeah.
So that's one of the beautiful things about quality of life and about the energy and about the quality of life that energy gives, is that it makes life easier for women. And I'm very excited about all these robots we're supposed to get here in the very near future to do all of my chores. I mean, by the time a robot can fold my laundry, yes, really, I'm here for that. And I hope they're affordable for everyone. But what I would say about the abundance agenda
Please.
is
Yes.
I'm grateful that people are talking about this issue. And we do see that. One of my graduate degrees is in essentially intercultural political communication and applied politics. And part of that is understanding that even within a country as big as the United States, we have different civic cultures. The right and the left communicate differently. And if the left wants to start using that language, and it makes it easier for them to think about how we ensure people have quality of life in that conservation mindset, I think that's terrific. And I think we should be supportive and have that positive conversation. One of the challenges that everyone faces when you start digging into the energy issue in particular, or developing housing, or building transmission, or whatever it is that we need to do to improve people's quality of life, and frankly, secure our national security, which is another thing we can talk about in a bit. Once you start digging into it, you realize that this tension between building an industry and environment is very dangerous because it stops us from doing the things that we need to do to take care of people. And if calling something abundance is what we need to do to make it easier for some to have that conversation, I support it. It's just like if you're concerned about climate change or you're concerned about air pollution, if we need to start talking about that in the context of, energy innovation and jobs and how do we make it all of the above instead of being renewables purists, I'm here for that too. These are important issues and we need to find ways for people to talk about them that meet them where they are. That is the respectful thing to do.
Yeah, politically, I would say partisanship wise, I think on the left, they're trying to have this conversation. I think more and more on the right, you see almost unanimous support for this idea. Some people kind of, I feel like protectionists are against abundance because they see it as a challenge. They want certain advantages and they don't want, let's say, the market to innovate, for certain industries, or they're very territorial about like certain things. So you might see a little resistance on the right to it, but I would say you're seeing it more, unfortunately and predictably, on the left. What was it, an Axios poll that said they were documenting like, what is your perception of abundance? I know Ezra Klein and some others are trying to get that out there. Great, noble effort. I'm not sure like if their fellow travelers in the left will be receptive. And this early poll, sadly, gives me great pause and kind of consternation about that. They said that most Democrats that they polled in Axios prefer populism over abundance. And I'm not sure if we're going to see the disparity on the right because there is this tension between populism and free market stuff, free market thinking rather, here on the right too. But it's interesting that even Democrats are like, no, we need populism and abundance. I'm skeptical because it means like corporations getting involved or the invisible hand is going to have an outsized influence. So maybe it's because they're not explaining what it is coherently, or maybe they need to work with conservatives to expand on what abundance actually means, or to get a better understanding of it. But I do think we're going to hear more about it. And I like to use the term because I think, I don't like, how would you say, like reimagining things? Because we often hear in political jargon, like you have to reimagine something to make it better. But if we can repackage something that sells and sounds better, I think that's a good, noble effort to do, which I think one energy source that can help deliver on this abundance is nuclear energy. And interestingly enough, Sarah, I don't know if you've seen this, but that new Gallup poll that came out recently showing again, growing acceptance of nuclear energy because of rising electricity demand, this need to have constant, reliable supply of electricity, raw materials, what have you, because we're consuming more and we don't have the necessary energy to meet that growing demand, not just from AI data centers, but also from tech, manufacturing, transportation, and nuclear is being discussed. I want to hear your thoughts on nuclear, if you can elaborate.
As a New Mexican, I love nuclear. We are the birthplace of the atomic era and the cradle of atoms for peace, which is incredibly important to me as a New Mexican, because I want our legacy to be powering the world and not something more destructive like the bomb. Many of my family are involved in the national labs. I care very much about this issue. No, my baby brother is a nuclear engineer who works at Sandia. For example, I even have a piece of trinitite, which is one of my prized possessions. It is a small piece of a glass tektite, which is a rock that was made when they did the Trinity test in New Mexico. It was so hot, it melted the sand into form a piece of glass. It's something that I take pride in as part of the legacy and history of my state, and I want to see it be used well. It can power the world. Fascinatingly, it is the French who are primarily powered by nuclear, and they have a great track record on air emissions and climate change, and less reliance on fossil sources like oil and gas from bad actors like Russia or Iran than many of their other counterparts who phased out nuclear and are now struggling and find themselves in the unpleasant position of still partially funding both sides of the war in Ukraine, which would absolutely make me crazy. And I do believe that our European friends are acting in good faith and trying to do the best they can to, again, meet the needs of their people during what is a difficult time. The war has definitely created some challenges. There's some, I'm not entirely sure if I believe this is what the war is about, because it's questioned how, I think it's not entirely sure the degree of critical minerals in the Donbass, but there are critical minerals there thought to be potentially a lot, making it, very attractive. And we know that natural resources, again, like that's what people go to war over, because it is a quality of life and a power situation. One of the reasons we were able to defeat the Axis in World War II is because, unlike Germany and Japan and Italy, the West, we had oil, we had coal. The Japanese, towards the end of the war, were having to fly their fighter planes on fuel made from pine tar, which is not very good. Right. So all of this does get to our national security too. And again, when you talk about having the conversation and bringing people in, it's about meeting people where they are. It's not just about packaging. It's about saying, what matters to you? And affordable, reliable energy, knowing that our national security is strong. These things matter to the American people. So does knowing that their air is clean and that they're going to be able to go off-roading or go hiking, and that that will be there for them and their grandchildren. And what I love about the idea of the abundance conversation or the conservative approach to conservation and stewardship is we believe we can have all of that. It'll take work to get there. I mean, I often say it's not even about some of these other issues. It's about getting to that point of good energy where we have the energy that gives us much quality of life without taking any. Because right now we make that trade-off, right? There are people who still die in coal mining accidents. There is the air pollution factor. There are supply chain risks. There's the fact that the Lord's rain falls
in
right.
solar panels.
Yes.
Most recently.
Yes. Yikes. Right.
Yeah.
That there's the fact that the Lord's rain falls on the just and the unjust. And unfortunately, some cultures that are antagonistic toward us, our foreign adversaries, have been very blessed in critical minerals or blessed in oil and gas. So when you start taking all of that together, we need to recognize the need to keep innovating, to find energy that, look, we have to keep the lights on, right? We have to provide quality of life for people because that saves lives too. And innovation can make sure that and this abundance conversation done right can help keep us on that path where we are having the energy that we need while also continuing to innovate for cleaner energy.
That's what Secretary Chris Wright often advocates for. He's a big abundance advocate and he likes nuclear too. But in that poll I was alluding to, it actually found either for the first time or maybe like the first time in a decade or two that women had started to warm up to approving nuclear energy. And what do you think has been a disparity for women's understanding of nuclear? Is it just a knowledge gap? Maybe they're not presented with the right facts about it, or maybe they just see aesthetically that the reactors are just like ugly, concrete, nothing, kind of scary, or they buy into the perception that it's leaking, toxic chemicals, it's not stored properly. Like safety is a big function of nuclear. Everyone and their mother knows this. Like all of us who like live, eat, and breathe this know that it's one of it's arguably the safest energy form out there with how they store it.
Absolutely.
The different guardrails that are placed onto it, but it's been held back because of inefficiencies, and even the own regulatory commission, the NRC that governs it, like they don't approve anything. And I was really impressed and encouraged by the president's executive order to unleash that. And then hopefully Congress will come in and further unleash it more with the different laws that govern.
We've already seen progress with, I believe, yesterday or the day before yesterday, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission approved the NuScale reactor, which is exciting.
Yes.
So in terms of public perception on nuclear, which I'm glad you raised this, we've actually just started a new campaign with swag. We'll send you a t-shirt when they come in. It says, "Ladies love going nuclear."
I love it.
Yes. Look, nuclear historically, what was the world's introduction to nuclear energy? It was Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And that is unpleasant. That's war. Women are not traditionally for that. Um, no one wants to see that kind of destruction. And when the introduction to nuclear is the most, essentially one of the most destructive incidents in human history, that was maybe not getting off on the right foot. I mean, now it was the necessity of war and national security that got us to innovate the technology, but the fact that it is this double-edged sword that can also give people quality of life and extend lives through emissions-free, affordable, reliable baseload generation is extraordinary. And we do need to embrace that. I'm sympathetic to the idea that it needs to have appropriate regulations. There needs to be appropriate guardrails. It is a potentially humanity-ending technology if something went wrong. So we do need to respect that, and we need to acknowledge those concerns. I do think that in the 70s, especially, there was a lot of environmental activity. There was the Jane Fonda film. Something that's happened in our lifetime is the Fallout video series. I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting story. They had the TV show, but for a lot of people, that kind of pop culture and the World War II aspect, whether you're a man or a woman, you think of nuclear first as destructive. One of the changes that has happened that I've seen recently, and I do think it's partially because it is such an obvious, affordable solution to air pollution as well as climate change for those that are concerned about it. And women do tend to be more concerned than men about climate change. It's also, we're in a situation where we haven't had an accident for a long time. As you said, the safety protocols are there. We've started to work out some of the storage issues for nuclear waste, and people are beginning to understand that, yes, this is nuclear waste, but it takes up so much less space than pollutants or issues that come from other generation sources. And you can even recycle some of the nuclear waste into these advanced reactors, which is very exciting. So we're continuing to innovate. I do think one of the concerns is, how do we do this in an equitable, safe way for the world? And I don't mean equity in the leftist sense, but equitable in the sense that globally, a lot of people, every human being needs power. How do we make sure that those people have the quality of life that they deserve, which is probably going to involve access to nuclear energy, but without creating issues around the bomb and governments getting the bomb that shouldn't have it? I do not know the answer to that question, but I think that the potential for violence is a big part of why women have been concerned. And I think that the movement around women liking nuclear has to do with concerns about air pollution and also the fact that it has been safer historically. We haven't had any really big accidents.
Yeah, not since Chernobyl, which I think is the most
right.
egregious one involving a commercial nuclear reactor. And that's not a nuclear failure. It was a Soviet central planning failure. And it didn't really, my parents were already out of the Soviet Union by the time that explosion happened. They were already in the States for 3 months, 4 months at the time. But and then, Lithuania and a couple other countries, as part of their deal to get into the EU, were like, we have to abandon our nuclear plants, and they now have regretted that. They could have retrofitted it, put new technology, restructure things. And so, like you were saying earlier, there is a lot of discussions now, and even European countries that were like very anti-nuclear have said, nope, we're going to be redoing projects, bringing back projects online, constructing new facilities using American SMR technology. And also, I think what also could draw women to nuclear is something I've seen. Nobody really talks about the footprint of certain projects. And an inconvenient truth about solar and wind is it gobbles up, utility scale especially, gobbles up a lot of land, valuable farmland or just productive land. And a nuclear facility, a typical one that could produce energy for 800,000 something, 900,000 homes, only occupies 1 square mile.
Smaller footprint. Yeah.
Like, it actually has a really small environmental footprint, plus the near zero emissions deliverables that it offers. But like, from that land conservation standpoint too, like, we don't talk about that enough.
People want the lights to turn on when they flip the switch. They do not want to have to think about where their energy comes from otherwise, right? I happen to think energy technology is beautiful. I think wind turbines are pretty. I think some solar installations are very beautiful. I've climbed to the top of an offshore wind turbine. I really am an all of the above person, but the footprint and how things look, it does matter. I don't know that women are thinking about energy in that way. It's not something that I've considered. I think um, it's probably more about clean air and then possibly affordability because it's the most affordable, reliable way to get clean air. It just is. And I think that's a kitchen table issue for women. And I think they care. I think women probably care more about that than they care about how an energy installation looks, other than no one wants to see a transmission line in their backyard. Nobody wants to see a wind farm. Most people don't even want to see the nuclear cooling tower, right? Um, so I think there is that component, but I don't think that that's why women might prefer it to any other energy source. Honestly, I don't think women think about preferred energy sources very much at all. I think you and I do, right? The other thing I would say is we're in a unique time. It was about a year and a half ago, and we're in an electricity war with China. We're in an AI arms race. Like warfare is going to be conducted almost exclusively by machines who can think and process information faster than any human being alive. And that's going to take a lot of electricity. So the only way to keep our country secure going forward is to generate the power that we need to do that well. And the probably in terms of clean air and footprint and political possibility, nuclear is going to be a big part of that. We can't do it with any one energy source. We need every electron we can get if we want to win the electricity and AI arms race. I mean, we talk about the AI arms race. It is fundamentally an electricity arms race because we can't win it. And the challenge that we will have over China and the challenge that Western democracies will have over the CCP in this war is that we will never choose electricity for defense over the well-being of our people. The CCP will do that, right? So we need to figure out how we are not going to be put in that position where we are losing this AI electricity war to China because our values value human life in a different way than theirs do. One of the reasons China is building so many coal plants is because they have a lot of coal there, and it is a way for them to protect their national security. No one in the world should be angry with a country for acting in its best interest that way. Well, the great news is that in this country, we also have resources. We have the best nuclear engineers in the world. We should tap that. We should be building as much energy as we can everywhere that we can if we're going to win this electricity war. And women, moms have always cared about safety. And I think this is starting to come through, and it's starting to come through for corporations and companies that have traditionally been concerned about sustainability, environment, climate change. They've been more, they've talked more about renewables and whatnot in the past, which is great. I think renewables matter. I think they have an important, vital, fundamental place in creating a diverse and resilient energy grid, especially at a time when we need as much energy as we can get. But you saw this change about a year and a half ago because of this electricity war. Traditional left of center or business interests that had been all about renewables suddenly said, oh, guess what? We are all about nuclear. We're really into this now because they know it is a zero emission source with proven technology. I love carbon capture too. It's just, it's a little bit less proven in many ways and needs a lot more support to get where it needs to go. Nuclear is much more ready if we can get some reforms that maintain the public's confidence and the industry's confidence in its safety while allowing for faster deployment. And that's one of the things I love about what the president.
So Sarah, as we round out our conversation, you mentioned that your outfit does a lot of polling on these energy issues. What can you discuss or what are you polling exactly? And then also tell people where they can connect with
Mm-hmm.
you if they want to learn more
Great.
about your efforts and your thinking.
We have a fantastic in-house pollster, Connor Sandagata, who's our polling fellow. We do all of our polling in-house. I like to say, if you didn't write the questions, don't believe the poll, but please believe my polls. We've done a great series of polling around energy issues recently, starting last summer. You can find those at rainycenter.org. Hit the polling button. You can also find our latest research on energy and our other issue areas in our Instagram page, our LinkedIn page, our X account. Again, it's Rainey Center. And what our energy polling shows is that Americans and American voters in particular, they want all of the above affordable, reliable, clean energy. They want investments in American jobs. They want incentives for homegrown energy. And they do genuinely believe in an all of the above approach. We understand that everyone needs energy and that national security is an issue. We talked about women and nuclear. Women, they are national security voters. They're safety voters. They want their kids to be safe. They also don't want there to be unnecessary wars to, send their sons and daughters off to fight in and the risks attendant to that. And having affordable, reliable energy, whatever the source, is a big part of making sure that our national security is strong here and at our bases abroad. I think these are all things that appeal to women. We do break down sometimes by gender our polling, although not always. It just depends on what we're looking to figure out. And I invite all of your listeners to go check that out. They can also follow me, Sarah E. Hunt01. I'm on X, I'm on Instagram, etc. I do like to tell jokes. I love talking about how I'm my cat's mom. And I love talking about how I'm a climate rebel. So I hope that when they see my posts, that they appreciate that sometimes I'm being an amateur comedian. But I do also post very serious analysis of what's going on. I just try to make it fun. I mean, I don't know if you saw in my thread on the Inflation Reduction Act changes that you can get a Birkin off a wish list from Hermes faster than you can get an actual gas turbine, because the wait lists for them are 5 to 6 years for a natural gas turbine. So I like to keep it fun and entertaining and hopefully accessible for everyone.
You did a great breakdown of the changes, and that's very funny that you mentioned you can get that. So yes.
But it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. I also said that if you're a man and you don't know what a Birkin is, your wife married you for love.
Well, I know what a Birkin is, but I have no desire for one. Maybe because I'm not so into purses and all that type of stuff. I've decluttered kind of any.
That's great.
Any notion of that. Yeah, when I was growing up, I grew up in Orange County, California. Materialism was kind of around you. And
everyone had a Birkin. It's boring to you.
I didn't want to be part of the in-crowd. I wanted to be irreverent and different and step out. But Sarah, it's been so lovely.
And you have.
You here on the podcast. I hope everyone will connect with you and follow your musings, check out the polling and your work. And let's revisit again sometime in the near future if anything breaking or interesting comes out. But thank you for coming on District of Conservation. A pleasure to chat with you.
Oh, absolutely a delight. Thank you, Gabby. I can't wait to see you again.